we're going to keep working on order of operations. So I'm going to go over a little bit what order of operations are first. So order of operations are the rules for the order we complete a problem in. So I'm sure you're probably thinking, why can't we just add, multiply, divide, subtract whenever we want? Well, if we did that, we get a bunch of different answers. So for example, let's look at this first problem here. So we have 4 plus 5 times 6 and 4 plus 5 times 6 on both sides. But really, we have two options here to start. We can either take 4 plus 5 first, like I have underlined on the left side, or the 5 times 6 first, which I have underlined on the right side. So let's do both of these problems these two different ways. So on the left, we're going to take 4 plus 5 first. So we know 4 plus 5 is 9, so we would write a 9, and then we bring down the times 6. Okay? Now, we have 9 times 6, and we know 9 times 6 is 54. So our answer on the left side would be 54. But if we look over at the right side, I have underlined the 5 times 6. We're going to do that part first. So what's 5 times 6? It would be 30. And then we bring down the plus 4. That stays the same. And then 30, or 4 plus 30, would be 34. So if you notice, it's the same problem, but we got different answers because we did the operations in a different order. So we have these order of operations to help us get the same answer every time. So everybody gets the same thing. Next slide. So now, here's what the order of operations are. So first, our first step is always parentheses, okay? First step, always parentheses. We have to look to see what's inside parentheses. Second step, exponents. That's step 2. So after we're done doing parentheses, we have to look at the exponents. Now, if there are no parentheses, then we do the exponents. Step 3 would be multiplying and dividing. These two steps are really one step that go together. Okay, and the way we decide which one we actually do first, we actually have to go left to right, like reading a book. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. And then our final step, step 4, is adding and subtracting. Okay, addition and subtraction. Step 4 down there. Same thing as multiplying and dividing. If there is more than one adding and subtracting problem in an expression, we go left to right to decide which one we do first. Okay, now there's a couple different ways to remember this. The first one we can see at the top. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Now we can tell the P in please also starts with P, like parentheses. Excuse starts with an E, like exponents. M, multiply. Dear, division. Aunt, addition. Sally, subtraction. So that's one way you can remember that phrase. Or the one I like to remember is we can see here, PEMDAS. Okay, PEMDAS. It's a little shorter, and we can write that down on every problem to help us solve it as well. So you can remember either way, either works. Personally, I like PEMDAS a little bit better. So let's use PEMDAS to solve a couple example problems here. First one, we have 16 minus 3 squared plus 8 times 3 squared. So I'm going to write down PEMDAS on the side to help us. Write it down right here. P-E-M-D-A-S. PEMDAS. Okay, now, first step we know, step 1, that P stands for parentheses. So if we look at this problem, do we have any parentheses? That answer is no. So we go right to step 2, which is exponents. Okay, so we do have a couple exponents here. We actually have 3 squared and 3 squared. So here's what we'll do. We'll evaluate both of these exponents, and we know 3 squared is what? Take a second to think. 3 squared will be 9. So we're going to replace both of those 3 squareds with a 9. A 9 here and a 9 here. Then everything else remains the same. We bring down the 16 and the minus plus 8 and the multiplication sign. We have to keep everything else the same. The only thing we change is what we evaluate. Okay? Now let's go to step 3. So remember, these are together. Be multiplying and dividing. So we do have one multiplication and dividing problem right now. We have that 8 times 9. So let's take 8 times 9. Give everyone a second to think about that. What's 8 times 9? 8 times 9 would be 32. Or not 32, I apologize, 72. So we'll bring down that 72, and then everything else will still remain the same. We'd have 16 minus 9 plus 72. Okay? Now, there's no more multiplying or dividing, so we go to our final step of adding and subtracting. Step 4. Now, once again, like I said, we have adding and subtracting in the same problem. So the way we decide what we do first is we have to go left to right. So if we start at the left, our first problem will be that 16 minus 9. We have to do that first. We have to do 16 minus 9 first. Give you a second to think about it. And 16 minus 9 would be 7. So we replace that with the 7 and bring down the plus 72. And now this last step is easy because we only have one option. We have 7 plus 72, and we would get 79 for our final answer there for this first problem. 79. Now, one thing I want to point out, when we solve this, it makes kind of an upside down triangle. And then our point at the bottom is our final answer. So if you're doing these correctly, most of the time, you're going to see kind of an upside down triangle. Okay. Next example. This time, we have 13 plus 8 squared minus 8 times 3 squared. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to write down PEMDAS so I remember the steps. Sometimes I forget, so it helps me if I write them down. So we'll start with step 1, the P, parentheses. Once again, no parentheses in this problem, so we'll go to step 2, exponents. Okay? Now, once again, we do, in fact, have 2 sets of exponents. We have 8 squared and 3 squared. So we're going to have to evaluate both of those right away. So let's think. What's 8 squared? And then what's 3 squared? Okay, 8 squared, if you're thinking about it, should be 64. And then 3 squared is 9. So we'll replace those with what our answers are after we evaluate those. And bring everything else down. Bring down the 13 plus minus 8. And then times now a 9 at the end instead of the 3 squared. Okay, now we'll go to our next step because we're out of exponents. We're going to do multiplying and dividing. And once again, we have one multiplication problem. We have that 8 times 9. And just like last problem, we had 8 times 9. And we said that was 72. So we replace the 8 times 9 with 72 and bring everything else down. The 13 plus 64, and that's going to say a minus 72. So now we're to our final step of adding and subtracting. Now, once again, we have both adding and subtracting. So to decide what we do first, we have to go left to right. So think, what are we going to do first? 13 plus 64, or 64 minus the 72. We're going left to right. Right, so we're going to do 13 plus 64 first. And if we do 13 plus 64, that would be 77 minus 72. And now we have the easy part. One more step to get our final answer of 72 or 77 minus 72 to get 5. Okay? And then once again, we notice we have a little upside down triangle here. Perfect. Okay, let's do one more example. This one is a little simpler actually. We have 5 minus 3 times 9 minus 6. So I'm going to write down our step. There we go. PEMDAS. Okay. So this time, our first step is parentheses. In this case, we do have parentheses. We have 2 sets. So we have to do that part first. So first, let's do that 5 minus 3. So 5 minus 3, we know is 2. So we'd have our 2. Now let's do our other set of parentheses, the 9 minus 6. What's 9 minus 6? Think for a second. 3. Good. So we'd have the 3. And then we just bring down that times sign. That stays in between them because we haven't used that yet. So now we're already down to one step. We don't even need to worry about exponents because there's none there. We're at our final step of 2 times 3. And we would get 6 for our final answer to this problem. So I hope that helped with order of operations. If you have any questions, please let me know.